Yes.
Okay, let's pray. Uchenima kanaka Jehovha tinokutendai Mwari Baba nechichitsa panguva ino tiri vapenyu tine utano Jehovha. Tiri kuisa musangano iwoyu mukati memupenyu Jehovha, chitibatsirai mutitungamirire zvese zvatichataura Mwari wangu zvive zvinoendera mberi zvive zvinobudirira. Tinongozviisa mukati memupenyu zita raMambo Jesu Kristu. Amen.
Yes, amen. We are going to start with the country spokespersons. Elijah Nyabuti. Can you hear us?
Yes,
Yes,
I can hear you.
Yes, you only have 1 minute.
Okay, thank you, Madam Yvonne. This is our Kenya weekly report. Greeting members and ambassadors. Thank you so much for those who attended our last Saturday meeting on 31st July 2021. As we're going to review, let's first review the last meeting, which our co-founder of I Love Black People, Mr. Christopher Mapondera, talked about situation on racism and xenophobia in South Africa. The spokesperson representing different countries made their presentation, and the Pan-African class session led by Nana Akua and Dr. Tyreen Wright took us the Pan-Africanism class. So in our group country, Kenya, we encourage our members to recommend Black-owned and Black-friendly businesses. We encourage members to visit iloveblackpeople.com website and register as members or ambassadors. So we also encourage our members to invite their family members to join the movement. We encourage our members to join our Saturday Zoom meeting, also invite family members and friends. In the case of any emergency, we encourage our members to visit iloveblackpeople.com website and click our emergency button. So we also encourage our members to adhere to the rules and regulations of I Love Black People movement. We also thank our members and ambassadors who managed to join our last Saturday Zoom meeting. So in our country, Kenya, COVID-19 updates on 7th August 2021, which is today. The total confirmed COVID-19 cases are 211,028. The total number of COVID-19 recoveries are 197,029. The cumulative fatalities are 4,117. The total number of people fully vaccinated are 695,690. Before I finish, I want to quote the quote from Kwame Nkrumah. Kwame said, "It is clear that we must find African solution to our problems. In this, we can found African unity. Divided, we are weak, but through unity, Africa could become one of the greatest forces for good in the world. Say no to racism, say no to xenophobia. Ubuntu, I am because we are."
Yes, thank you very much, Elijah Nyabuti. Up next, we have Robert Kasivuru from Uganda. Robert Kasivuru, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm hearing you very well. Greetings.
Yes, you only have 1 minute.
Members of the family. Yeah. The following are the activities done through the week in line with protecting the Black people against xenophobia and racism in our country, Uganda group. Members and ambassadors who managed to attend the last Zoom call were thanked, and those who didn't were encouraged to find a possible means of attending Zoom call this Saturday. Links inviting family and friends to join I Love Black People organization was shared to them and all social media platforms. We congratulated our sister country, Nigeria, upon celebrating her 61st year of independence from the French colony. In line with protecting blacks against xenophobia and racism, black-owned and friendly businesses were recommended by group members or ambassadors. A reminder for Black people to press on the emergency button on the Allow Black People website when you feel threatened against xenophobia and or racism was done by sharing the link to friends and family members. COVID-19 updates in Uganda. Total confirmed cases are currently 94,904. Death cases are 2,752. Recovered cases are 83,234. Vaccinated at least one dose are 1,150,676, which is 2.6% of the current country's population. Fully vaccinated are 4,129, less than 0.5 of the country's population. Average cases received daily through this week. I think now the average has lowered to 232. Thank you. Because
Yes, thank you very much, Robert Kasivuru from Uganda. Up next, we have Imran Ibrahim from Nigeria. Imran Ibrahim, can you hear us? Imran Ibrahim from Nigeria, can you hear us? Okay, I think maybe he has a problem with the network. We are going to continue with Roland Gassam from Cameroon. Roland Gassam, can you hear us?
Hello?
Yes, Roland Gassam. You only have 1 minute.
Thank you, Yvonne. Brothers and sisters, good afternoon. Let's share I Love Black People Cameroon Weekly Report. Date 6 August 2021. Period under review from 31st July 2021 to 6 August 2021. A Zoom meeting was successfully held on Saturday after preparation of the next conference call began. Moderator Augustine M. Pandita, member and ambassador who attend the last call and review follow. He encouraged everyone to register their attendance on the next conference call to be on 7 August 2021, days of celebration of Côte d'Ivoire Independence Day. We wish all our brothers and sisters of Côte d'Ivoire the best, while sharing the link in which people can apply to become ambassador and call brothers and sisters to invite more friends and family members to join the movement. Continue encourage identifying and recommending more safe places for Black people globally. Thereafter, we welcome new member and wish a happy Independence Day to Niger on 3rd August. Sinclair Skinner posted on Olympic game image, which with a quote, "I am rooting for everybody Black." COVID-19 update in Cameroon. Confirmed cases 82,064 with 1,334 deaths in a total of 349,845 vaccine doses have been administered. From Cameroon, here is Ambassador Roland Gassam. Thank you very much. I am because we are.
I am because we are. Thank you very much, Roland Gassam. Up next, we have Nathalie Kanyanje from Burundi. Nathalie Kanyanje, can you hear us?
Yes, greetings.
You from
My name is Greetings. My name is Nathalie Kanyange from Burundi. I'm reading Miss Africa report. I love Black People, Africa Group Weekly Report, date 7 August 2021, period under review. 31 jury, 2021 up to 7 August 2021. Activities or tax given on the platform. Number first, registering our attendance on Saturday course, which is today. ILO Black People requested us to submit articles for the newsletter. Augustine Pandey requested to submit articles for the newsletter. ILO Black People wished a happy Independence Day to Nigeria. Moderator Augustine Pandey requested us to submit weekly reports. Moderator Augustine Pandey reminded us to use ILO Black People xenophobic button. ILO Black People request us to submit business recommendations. Moderator Augustine Pandey requested to explain how we are doing to appreciate our parents, what we are doing to appreciate what our forefathers did fight for our independence. COVID-19 update in Burundi. Cumulative number of cases for January 30, 2021, up to 5 August. We have 7372. Number of deaths is 9. Number of recovers is 1, 5, 3, and 8. Cumulative numbers of deaths of August 2021 is 38. This report is submitted for Nathalie Kanyange.
Yes, thank you very much, Nathalie Kanyange from Burundi. Lastly, we have Derry Anthony from Ghana. Derry Anthony, can you hear us?
Yeah, hello.
Yes, you only have 1 minute.
Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Derry Anthony. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to give report about activities that went on in the Ghana group within the week. To begin with, members who attended last week's Zoom meeting were thanked and asked to confirm the attendance for today's meeting. Those who were not able to attend were encouraged to do their best to attend. We also encourage to invite our family and friends to join the family. Also, a leaderboard made up of members who managed to participate in the tasks assigned to us within the week were kept in the group. In addition, a notice was kept in the page that Niger was celebrating its Independence Day. A brief history about Niger was shared to us in the group. Members wished them well for their celebration. Furthermore, we were reminded that the newsletter is there waiting for us to submit our article for it to be added. Again, we were asked in the group to share what we are doing to appreciate our frontiers, selfless dedication towards the struggle for the freedom and independence we are enjoying today. Furthermore, members and ambassadors were reminded of writing reports about activities that went on in the group within the week. Last but not least, new members and ambassadors were added to the group. Rules and regulations were spelled out to them, and also documents and materials they need in order to know much about the family were given to them to read. They were also encouraged to attend Saturday Zoom meetings and participate of the family. COVID-19 updates in Ghana. Ghana has recorded a total of 106,000. Out of this, the active cases are 6,766. The number of recoveries are 98,814. And the deaths recorded so far are 854. Derry Anthony, reporting from Ghana. I am because we are. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Derry Anthony. Up next, we have Mr. Mapondera. Mr. Mapondera, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome.
Yeah, okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. As usual, I always have much pleasure to be interacting with you and share some of my views. Today, I'm going to talk about something that I think I've talked about it before, but today I may have a different twist to it. Because this is something that is very dear to me, and it's something that I feel as African people we must be conscious of all the time, and we must always look out for it. Well, you can use so many different ways of defining this. You can call it resource nationalism, which is being conscious and also protective of the resources that you have, so that you utilize them for your own development and for your own good and for your own people. What bothers me the most, and I keep reading these stories, for young people, not even young people alone, but the whole families trying to find a way to go to Europe to look for a better way of life. A couple of days ago, I met one young man who had come from, I think it was Cameroon, and he came to the US via Latin America. How he ended up, in Washington, D.C., it's a miracle to me. But when he was describing, his whole journey, they were running into armed robberies, people getting sick and dying on the way. They were just kind of left out into the, into the forest or wherever they died at, because nobody was in a position, where they can, find a place to bury them or what have you. And, they run into, the local police people, arrest them, they take their money and all that. I mean, it's a very gruesome experience. Now, I think this happens because we as African people, we don't appreciate the value of the resources that we have. Let alone that do we really sit down to figure out what are the resources that we have. If you look at the history of colonization, it starts from 1884, where the European countries demarcated Africa to themselves as if there was nobody living there, as if nobody owned Africa. The Belgians gave themselves, DRC and what have you, the English take, Rhodesia, South Africa, Egypt and all that. The Germans take Namibia, the Italians took, Ethiopia for a short space of time until, the Ethiopians, fought them off. So there's always this desire to own and exploit African resources. And what were these resources? I put them in 4 different categories. The first resource is the soil or the land. All the wars that were fought in Africa, and what it was all about was having control of the land. And the next resource is the water that we have in Africa, whether it is in rivers, in lakes, or it is underground water and so forth. As you know, water is life. With water, you can do so much, one, not besides, just drinking water to preserve yourself, but also for agriculture, for industry, there's so many uses of water. Anyway, I mean, you can't live without water as human beings. The next resource is the sun. Very few people look at the sun as a resource. One of the things that we are blessed with in Africa is that we get more sun than many parts of the world. And for a long time, we never looked at the sun as a resource. But it's only now when we start talking of solar energy, we can now use solar energy for lighting our homes, for industry, for farming, and all that. But we never looked at it as a resource in any way. And then the other part that we need to be looking at is that, okay, we become conscious of these resources. Okay, we got the land, we got the mountains, we got the rivers, we got the lakes, we got the sun and so forth. But how do we convert these resources to be of benefit to us? The abundance that we have, if we become more conscious, for converting those resources for our development, then there won't be any need for us to leave the continent to go elsewhere. We can only leave it if we think by going to other lands, we're going to extract something that we can bring to the continent and be of help in our development. It's just the same way those people who have invaded Africa, they came to Africa, got our resources to benefit their own home countries. Okay, so we can do the same thing. What we need from the Western world, maybe because they are, advanced in technology, we come here, we learn the technology, understand, better ways of communications, farming, food production, and all kinds of things, Then after that, we can go back to Africa and utilize them. All right. Now, as Africa, we are caught in between several worlds, which I would classify that we are still dominantly in agrarian societies. We very much depend on land, food production, on agriculture. And then on the other side, we're in the process of industrialization. Okay, a lot of what we produce is some that we can only provide for agriculture, some that we have to consume immediately. But we are also in the process of having to convert some of those food things we grow in agriculture into products, like when you're growing soybean, convert it into soy meal, into cooking oil, the soy meal, you use it for your, animal feed and so forth. We have, food preservation, these are the industries, that we have to look into, or we are developing, so that in times of drought or in times of when the weather is not favorable, at least whatever we grow during the favorable times of the year, we can be able to utilize them, eat them later on. But in order to make that gap again, we now start getting into, irrigation and so forth. That's again the intervention of the things that were developed in the Western world, that we can now bring back to, to Africa. I mean, when you talk of irrigation, irrigation actually started with the African people, but we're using a different type of irrigation because of our understanding of mathematics and laws of gravity and so forth, hydraulics and all that. We're using a lot of canals. We understood that you could move water from a higher area, then you can flood it into a field, and be able to grow your stuff that way. But with the mechanization of agriculture, of course, then we started, having to utilize, water pumps, pivot irrigation, drip irrigation, and all that. A mechanical way of utilizing, transmitting the water so that you can go to the various fields where you want it to be. And then the next stage is that of knowledge-based industries. That's where your computers, information technologies and so forth. One advantage that we have had as an African people, that there are several stages of industrialization that we had to leapfrog so that we catch up with where the rest of the world is. And again, the advantage, of course, in a way of us, going to the Western world, learn their technology, come back, to Africa, and use it for development. Now, when you look at those resources, as I mentioned, the land, the water, and the sun. The land has got so much in it, besides minerals, energy. We have geothermal energy you can get from the earth, food production and so forth. So that as we look at how we sustain ourselves as an African people, the major exercise, how do we convert those resources to produce things that can be able to help us and sustain us. So I keep talking about this resource understanding and resource management is something that I think we must always be conscious of. Whilst many of us are trying to go out of Africa, but those who understand the value of the resources that we have are busy coming in, and they are very happy to see us leave the continent, or to see us being ignorant of what we have. Because all of a sudden you hear that, oh, there's a lithium mine, that is being mined there. Then you are surprised, but this is where we used to head our cattle, in this area and so forth. But we didn't know there was lithium, and everybody is coming to invest in it and so forth. But if we were conscious of what we have, then we wouldn't be taken by surprise. When somebody comes in to want to exploit our resources, at least you can be in a position to say, okay, we know what we have. Let's talk. Yeah, bring your technology. I bring in the raw material. Let's produce something that will benefit us as well as it is benefiting you. That becomes maybe a win-win situation. But right now, it's too much of a one-way where the so-called investors are taking advantage of our ignorance, of not knowing the value. First of all, not knowing what we have, and also not knowing the value of what we have, and not having come up with the strategies of how we convert those resources for our benefit. So I think I'll end up here. If there are any questions or comments, I'll also be checking out on the chat here. I'll be glad to answer or to explain more on that. Okay, Yvonne. Yvonne?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we have a question from Roland Gassam. He's asking, how do we manage in Africa to allow brothers and sisters to invest in continent than foreigners?
Well, there are so many factors involved, but first of all, what I was talking about, being conscious of what you have and the value of what you have. Okay. 2, understanding or creating an economic system that promotes investment by the indigenous people or by the African people. It becomes very easy for a foreigner to come and get even a loan within your own country than it is for you to be able to get a loan from the local financial institutions, because they start asking for things like, collateral and all that. Whereas the most important thing that they should be able to look at what is the viability of the project that you are doing. So it's essentially what we have to do is to be able to provide an enabling environment that encourages local people to invest, or if somebody has got some brilliant ideas that we should, as a state or as a country, come to assist them to realize what they've come up with.
Yes,
Any-
the next question is how can we abolish demarcation board rules and act so that Africa can be free from Europeans?
Well, right now it's a tall order to be totally free of Europeans, but the only way we can deal with that is that we ourselves have to be one, educated in the sense that we must understand, technology. We must understand, how to beneficiate the resources that we have. I think once we are in that position, how do we create wealth? How do we convert our resources into wealth so that we are not dependent on foreigners coming to assist us? Right now, we still have too much of a dependency syndrome, where we think unless the NGOs come and show us how to grow food in our village, we're just going to sit on our hands and nothing happens, so we're going to change our mentality, in terms of how we relate to foreign help and how we relate to our own self-sufficiency. Anything else?
Yes, there is another question from Mohammed Folna. He's saying we have a lot of talented people in Africa. What's the reason behind our African people not believing our own African innovators?
Again, it's a mental process that we've got to go through. I think if you want to listen to what PLO Lumumba says, that we've got all these universities in Africa, medical schools and everything, but all the roads and bridges are designed by the Chinese or by the Europeans. We don't give our own civil engineers that we train in our universities to do this work. We've got doctors that are trained in Africa, trained in our universities and so forth. But when we get sick, if we are a leader, rather than get treated at the local hospital, you send your kids to Dubai, to India, to US, and before COVID, it used to be much easier to just fly, you go to the UK or you go to the US, but because of these restrictions that you now have because of COVID, our people are now being forced to look inward, get the help that we need from our own, technical resources, from our own doctors and so forth. But again, it's a mind change that we need to have. I mean, before the intervention of Western medicine, I mean, we used to cure ourselves, with our own local herbs. There was so much, that we had within Africa, some of which the same Europeans would come and get our secrets of, the herbs that we utilize. They come back to their countries, convert those herbs, into medicines that they will come and sell to us at 50 times the price of, what they got out.
Yes, there is also a comment that where is it? Maybe we can take a question.
Yeah.
Someone is asking, how can we claim back the head of Lumumba homeland?
First of all, I'm assuming Lumumba's head is what? Is in Belgium? Was that what it is? I'm not very familiar as to what they did with his head. If those who killed him took his head and took it to Belgium to show the Belgian king, not that, yeah, for sure we've killed Lumumba, here's his head. I think it becomes an issue of diplomatic negotiations, to have his head returned. I mean, we have a similar situation in Zimbabwe, where our heroes from what we call the first Chimurenga, which was in between 1896 to 1906, where when the Europeans were invading our country, you know, we fought against them. Even my own grandfather's he had is still in a museum in the UK. You know, there are several, you know, others who were fighting the whites together with him, you know, and we've been trying to negotiate with the British that they return the heads of our heroes, you know, back to Zimbabwe, you know. So I think same thing may have to happen with the Lumumba, you know, that they have negotiations to have his head brought back.
Yes, and the last question is from Augustine Sa. He's asking, what's the reason behind poor educational infrastructure and health access for our people?
Well, again, it's all a matter of consciousness. You know, like when we become independent countries, at times we fail to define what is it that we want our countries, nations to be. Okay. Two, it's understanding the systems that we inherit. The system that we inherited, if we were a French colony, what you inherited was a little bit of France that was transferred to your country. So when you become independent, you just want to continue with what the French, you know, were doing. Same thing with the English, you know, you just want to continue with what the English were doing. So what you have to do is to totally create our own system that is relevant to us. And this is where we ourselves, you know, we should use our education only as a way of opening up our minds, but the thinking must be done for us in order to come up with something that is relevant and helpful to us.
Yes, thank you very much. Maybe the rest of the questions will be answered next week. Thank you very much, sir, for your time.
Yeah, okay. Then it's a pleasure. At least I like when you ask the questions. At least I know some of the concerns that you have. And, you know, next time, anything you want me to talk about, please let me know and then I can prepare for it ahead of time. Thank you for listening to me, and you all have a wonderful weekend.
Yes, thank you very much. Up next, we have Nana Akua. Nana Akua, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, welcome.
Good day. Thank you. Thank you. Good to see you. Good to see you all. Welcome, welcome. This is our new series of the I Love Black People Pan-African Healthcare class. So hopefully those of you who are joining the call that are also in the WhatsApp group, hopefully you have received your reading assignments throughout the week. So we will kind of get right into it. What I wanted to highlight is the purpose of the class and what it entails. So the purpose is to educate our people on how to stay well. And as a holistic practitioner for almost 25 years now, my interest is to give you good information in the various areas of holistic healing or natural healing or holistic wellness, complementary medicine, there's alternative medicine. There's so many traditional medicine. There's so many terms that we use for this sort of healing. But the point is to expose you to all these different modalities and give you sort of a working knowledge about how to incorporate this into your lives so that you are at your optimal peak, so that you can continue to function in this world and fight against racism and xenophobia. So this is sort of, in my opinion, the first great place to start. is to make sure that you are well, mind, body, and spirit. And thank you all that have cut your cameras on. I appreciate you. Again, you know I love seeing beautiful Black faces. So thank you so much. And so the first topic is basically defining what holistic wellness is. And again, there are many different terms for this field or this body of work or this type of healing. And so just know that they're all one and the same. Holistic health can entail nutrition, herbs, massage, Reiki, yoga, food as medicine. So dealing a lot with different types of diets and nutritional plans. It could deal strictly with emotional health or mental health, chakra balancing, polarity balancing, hands-on healing or vibrational healing, traditional healing. So there are so many aspects of holistic healing. And so basically, it's a matter of us focusing on healing and bringing into balance the entire mind, body, and spirit, knowing that the individual has many different components. So we're not just one-sided, we're multifaceted, okay? And so when I get my screen up, which I try to do before I ask to share the screen, but we'll see how that works. But Yvonne, if you'll allow me to share the screen. And I'm sure she's busy behind the scenes sending out messages. I get a million of these notifications for these WhatsApp groups. But Yvonne, if you will allow me to share the screen, if you can hear me.
Your screen.
Okay, so if you have been following your reading assignments, you've seen this handout, or if you've joined us before, you've seen this handout. So this picture graph or word graph, I'll say, is pretty much just giving you all the different aspects of what holistic health is. So it combines the spirit, it talks about exercise, it involves minerals and vitamins, it talks about diet, it focuses on prevention, focuses on supernatural or hope. I don't know if I would use the word supernatural, but you know, metaphysical, spirit, you know, these things, energy, any and all things natural. It can be faith-based. Integrative medicine is another term. I listed some terms earlier. Integrative medicine is another thing that you may hear used, but just know that all of these things are talking about holistic medicine, consisting of healing the whole person in order to obtain optimal health, right? And so we know that there are different principles that are behind that. And so this is just more so for your information, so that you know what holistic principles are. And if you're seeking a healthcare professional, you want to, even if it's a regular medical doctor that doesn't necessarily say or promote that they do natural medicine, you still want someone that more frequently than not, or for the most part, addresses or treats using these types of principles. So I really encourage you to go through these, but basically this is about knowing that you have power. You know, your body has an innate ability to heal itself. The creator, you know, can, of course, and will always assist in that. You always have to focus on the root cause of an issue and not just the symptoms. You have to get a practitioner that respects your opinion, your views, and your concerns, because you know your body best. So you want to have someone that you can establish a good respectful working relationship with, so that they will listen to you and will, of course, let you guide them in terms of kind of where to look or what things are your priorities, because you want them to really serve you. Whenever we go places, you know, whether we're walking into an auto repair shop or a hair salon, whatever, and I'm not thinking of other things at this moment, the barber shop, whatever, the doctor is no different. You should know that that person is there to serve you, to work for you. And so you cannot be afraid to say what your views are, what your concerns are, what your priorities are. And of course, they're the trained, educated professionals, so they will guide you accordingly, but it cannot be void of your issues or your concerns. So you want to make sure that you go empowered and you're not going as if you're the child to the parent or the elder that feels you can't have a say. So holistic approaches will always consider the individual and always use teaching moments to educate the person so that you can avoid health issues in the future. And then this handout here talks about different types of alternative therapies. I've mentioned a lot of them. Some of them I haven't, just because they didn't come to mind. But chiropractic care, acupuncture, music therapy, homeopathy, all of these are things that are part of natural healing or holistic wellness, integrative medicine, so on and so forth. And so we will discuss a lot of those in this class, okay? I put this picture here of this Sangoma, this traditional priest from South Africa, or Azania or Zania. And we want to, in this class, my perspective is always to go to your traditional healer. Whatever you may not follow in terms of ritualistic practices, one thing is for sure, because you know, you don't have to focus on what she may do to get to the healing. For example, the items and implements that are before her, but let's focus on what's behind her. So you see all of those jars and jars and jars of herbs, of medicine. That is what I'd like you to focus on. I think we sometimes focus on how one gets to figuring what combination or what remedy or what is the treatment for a condition. But for sure, this is going to be your person that will know natural remedies, herbal remedies, the best. And because we are spread out throughout the world, a lot of different countries represented on this call in this class, I will, of course, mention certain herbs or certain remedies that may or may not be available to you in your part of the world. But your local traditional healer is going to have those local herbs and natural remedies that will assist you in your healing. Okay, so I encourage us to embrace this regardless of your religion. And some of the handouts here, again, just focus on some of the concepts. What I want you to do is take responsibility for your own health and well-being. And that means, again, feeling empowered, taking charge of what you eat, who you're around, who you allow to become, you know, or whose energy you take on, which is what happens when you become acquainted with someone or in someone's presence. If it doesn't feel right, move on, leave that situation. That impacts your emotional and your mental health. Believe in your power to heal yourself. And know that you're a person, not whatever condition or dis-ease or illness that you have. And then again, as mentioned earlier, always focus on finding what caused the problem. You know, what is the root cause? What's the trigger? What brought it on? At what onset did you experience whatever symptoms? Not just focusing on how to alleviate the symptoms. And whatever practitioner you go to, you want them to focus on that as well, and not just giving you some sort of pills or medication that's going to alleviate the symptoms, not understanding or finding out what actually caused the problem. We know that there are different approaches that might focus on diet, detox, fasting, things of this nature, energy healing or spiritual healing, dealing with chakras, meridians, different vibrations. All of these are aspects of healing the body holistically. So this is for your reference. You can review this later. Some of these components come from Chinese medicine or Asian styles of healing. So these are all just sort of things that you can study in more depth. Moving on specifically, I want to talk about some aspects of nutrition. We'll be very brief with this. We don't have a lot of time. I can teach a whole entire 6-week course on just nutrition. So of course, this is given in very brief, bullet points. I won't even say detail because we're not going to focus so much on the detail, but some of the information that I provided, again, if you haven't already, you can refer back to later. But just sort of the basics. Nutrients. What is nutrition? It's the study of how the body uses nutrients and what nutrients are needed for the body, how they function in the body, what they do for one's health. But basically, a nutrient is a substance found in food. And these nutrients provide nourishment to the body. There are 6 types of nutrients that are listed here. As you see, carbohydrates, fats, proteins, vitamins, minerals, and water. Okay? And so I provided some charts here that give you just sort of some brief descriptions, sort of quick overviews of what some of the different vitamins that are needed in the body and what they do. Some types of proteins you can refer back to. I often like to give examples of proteins, especially plant-based proteins, because a lot of people who would perhaps consider plant-based diets or vegetarian types of diets shy away from it, thinking that you cannot get protein other than from meats. So these handouts, and there's a couple of them, these handouts show you actual protein-rich foods that are not animal-based, okay? And we'll talk a little bit more about protein in a moment. Here's another chart. It does give you examples of meats. And then you can compare other natural plant-based substances that have just as much or more grams per serving as some of these meats. So as we get into talking a little bit about nutrition, let's just give, I like this handout that I got from the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, where it basically just gives you a quick overview of what some of our organs do, right? So the lungs, we know the lungs provide oxygen to blood. We know the heart circulates blood throughout the body. We know that the stomach helps digest food. We know that the intestines absorb nutrients from food. We know that liver removes toxins from blood and processes nutrients from food. And the kidneys filter blood of waste and extra fluids, right? And in terms of nutrients, right? We mentioned proteins, carbohydrates, fats, vitamins, minerals, water, right? So in the category of macronutrients, this is where you find proteins, carbohydrates, and fats, right? So proteins, again, as I was pointing out, we know that they're found in meats like beef and pork and chicken and game or poultry or wild meats and things of that nature, as well as like seafood and eggs and things like that. But as pointed out, we know that there are many food sources of protein that come from plants, right? But we know that we need proteins because they provide the body with amino acids, and these are our building blocks. So these building blocks of proteins are needed for growth, development, and to repair and maintain body tissue, right? But again, refer back to the handouts in this packet that will give you a lot of plant-based or vegetable-based options for protein. Carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are essential Those of us with a little extra weight, we often shun carbohydrates, but it is an essential nutrient. We absolutely need carbs. The issue is selecting the right carbs, right? So, but carbs provide energy and fuel for the body. So we absolutely need it to be able to move, function, and operate our bodies, right? So we know that these are necessary for energy. This is what allows us to walk, to talk, to run, to move heavy objects, to be flexible, and to just basically grow and develop, right? And so carbohydrates are essential. What we need to learn is how to select proper carbohydrates, low glycemic carbs, which we will talk about, I think, in the 4th class. So we will talk about the glycemic index, which I think is one of the better ways of figuring out how to choose or which carbohydrates to choose. But moving on to fats, we know that fats are found in different oils as well as different meats, poultry, and fish. And these fats provide structure to cells. They cushion membranes, they kind of lubricate the body. It helps prevent damage, helps things move and function in the body. Also are essential for healthy eyes and lungs. And there, of course, is a whole discussion about what healthy fats are, which fats or oils to consume. There are more details about that in these handouts as well. But now let's talk about the last or 2 other components of nutrients, micronutrients. These are your vitamins and minerals, right? So we know that vitamins aid in energy production, wound healing, bone formation, immunity, eye and skin health. We know that minerals help maintain cardiovascular health and structural health, right? So they provide structure to the skeleton, right? And so we know that these micronutrients we ideally want to get from food. But a lot of times, unless we have really good diets, a lot of times we have to supplement our vitamins and minerals, right? And so that can also be tricky because what we really want is a food-based vitamin or mineral where you are not getting a synthetic version or a man-made version of that vitamin or mineral. And so it's important to know what natural sources of foods you can find different vitamins and minerals. And that was that first chart there. Oh, no, did I skip over it? This one, sorry about that. So we know that we want to ideally choose different foods to obtain our vitamins and minerals rather than just a pill. So again, this chart, reviewing this, knowing what natural sources of A vitamins or B vitamins or C or D vitamins, where you can actually find these nutrients in your foods is going to be key, okay? So macronutrients, micronutrients, we've discussed those. There's so much more that could be said, of course, about these types of things. I encourage you to review these types of proteins, vitamins, minerals, things of that nature. Again, this chart here, I will not go through specifically, but it's important that you know what the different vitamins and minerals do, and of course, how to find them not only in foods, but then the next chart will talk about how to find them in herbs. So let's just highlight just a few of these. Vitamin A, for example. We know that vitamin A is needed for growth and development, for immune function, for reproduction, for skin and bone health, for vision, red blood cell formation. And so we know that this is essential. A lot of times people will just get a vitamin A supplement, but ideally you would use cantaloupe, carrots. It's found in some dairy products, eggs, green leafy vegetables, pumpkins, red peppers, sweet potatoes. These are natural food options for this essential vitamin, okay? Vitamin C, we know that vitamin C is good for boosting the immune system, healing wounds. It's a good antioxidant, which gets rid of free radicals and other substances in the body that can cause disease or illness. It's good for collagen and connective tissue formation. And we can find vitamin C in broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cantaloupe, citrus fruits, kiwi fruit, peppers, strawberries, tomatoes. These are essential. Vitamin C during a time of cold, flu, corona, these types of things are very important to take note. Vitamin D, this I don't know about on the continent of Africa, but here in the States, it seems as if everyone is getting diagnosed with vitamin D deficiency. Vitamin D is necessary for blood pressure regulation. That's a big, big, big one. Bone growth, calcium balance, hormone production, immune function, nervous system function. Vitamin D is very important. And we know, of course, and I've said this in the class before, I'd really be curious to know if people closer to the equator, right, and get a lot of sun for most of the year. I really wonder if you have this issue like a lot of us here in the States do. I'm really curious about that. But basically, sun, going out, getting your natural vitamin D as a source. But in terms of food sources, eggs and fish liver oils, and things like that are your natural sources. Otherwise, you can find it in a lot of other foods, but they are fortified with it. Fortified means they've had to enrich it or add that to it. So, you know, not your best option because it's not naturally there. They've had to add that nutrient to that food. So you'll see fortified cereals or enriched grains and things like that. You'll find fortified dairy products. Margarine we should never use, so that's not something I suggest. So I would strike that if I could. But fortified orange juice, fortified soy beverages, and here in this country they are genetically, you know, engineering and making up soybeans, and so soy is something you also have to be careful about. So I wouldn't just across the board recommend that either. But these are just some examples. And I want you to keep in mind, we're gonna talk about some herbal sources for these vitamins as well. Because for me, something like a vitamin D or some of these or some of the B vitamins that you can only get from certain places, like meat products and things like that, if there is an issue or concern about, you know, decreasing your meat intake, then that's when a person may do certain herbal sources for some of these vitamins and minerals, okay? So moving on, vitamin E we know is good for the immune function, for developing blood vessels. We know that we get these from green leafy vegetables, from nuts, seeds, peanuts, peanut butter, vegetable oils, things of that nature. Vitamin K, we know that's necessary for blood clotting. So people who have sort of blood disorders or sometimes cardiovascular issues, high blood pressure issues, vitamin K becomes a very important nutrient. We know that we find that in green vegetables like broccoli, spinach, chard, mustard greens, things of that nature. And again, I won't go through all of these. It's tempting. And I always say, I'm not going to hit every one, but let me make it a point to skip down. And let's get to some of the minerals. So minerals. Most people are familiar with calcium and magnesium, but there are many other essential nutrients under the mineral category that we need, right? So let's start with calcium though. Calcium we know is important for blood clotting, for the nervous system, for muscle contraction, for hormone secretion, for bone and teeth formation, for the constriction and relaxation of blood vessels. It's very important, right? So we know that, and as we age, calcium becomes even more important, but some food sources are almond, rice, coconut, and hemp milks. some canned seafoods like sardines and salmon and things of that nature, some dairy products, green leafy vegetables, tofu. And again, you'll find this whole category of fortified cereals and juices that they've enriched or added calcium to. Chromium is another one I'd like to point out, because people who are diabetic, chromium becomes important for, or even if you're predisposed to it or it runs in your family, or you know you eat a lot of sugary or starchy foods, chromium is probably a supplement you want to make sure that you are getting into your diet. But this is important for insulin function, okay? And it's also good for how proteins, carbs, and fats are metabolized in the body. Right? So chromium is found in broccoli, it's found in certain fruits like apples and bananas and grapes and oranges. It's found in certain spices. So this is one group here you're seeing, right, where they're listing the spices or herbs that you'll find it. So garlic and basil, we can also find chromium, turkey, whole grains, that sort of thing. So chromium is important. Iron is another important mineral that I'd like to point out, because a lot of times people are anemic and have low iron, and it can be confused for other things. You know, sometimes you'll have low energy. You'll just think, oh, I'm just out of shape, or, oh, I'm just tired, or I'm not getting enough sleep. And all those things could be true, but you also could be iron deficient. And we know that iron is good for energy production. It's good for growth and development. It is essential for immune function, red blood cell formation, reproduction, and wound healing, right? A lot of times people don't realize how important iron is. But we know we can find iron in beans and peas, dark leafy greens or dark green vegetables. Usually these are the leafy greens. Meat, poultry, prunes, raisins, seafood, whole grains. And even though that seems like a lot of options to get iron, a lot of people are deficient in iron. And so, and when you get deficient, it is a little difficult to even get it from food sources. So usually people will have to take some type of supplementation. But I would say, in my experience, or what I have used, is things like blackstrap molasses, or even chlorophyll. These are things that have enriched and increased, you know, my iron. Usually using liver cleansing herbs or liver strengthening herbs also will help with the increase in iron in the body. And when we talk about herbal sources of different minerals and vitamins, we'll talk, you know, you'll see iron listed, and you'll know of some other herbs that are also rich in iron, things like nettle and comfrey and such. Okay. Magnesium, another one, again, we've heard of along with calcium. We know that it's good for regulating blood pressure, bone formation, energy production, nervous system production, normal health, normal heart rhythm, protein formation. Magnesium is very important, right? But we know we can find it naturally in avocados, bananas, beans, peas, dairy products, green leafy vegetables, nuts, seeds, potatoes. Again, a lot of sources for it. However, a lot of people become deficient in magnesium. So I would say, as you age especially, or if you have any issue with energy or muscle cramps or things of that nature, problems with your bones or joints, know that you have to focus more on your magnesium, your calcium, and, you know, maybe some other minerals as well. So phosphorus, potassium, selenium, they're all very important. Potassium is another one I'd like to highlight, because this comes into play with people who are hypertensive or have high blood pressure, because we know that potassium regulates blood pressure. It's good for carbohydrate. It's good for fluid balance, helps with growth and development, heart function, muscle contraction, the nervous system, protein formation. So it's crucial, right? So we know that potassium, most people only know about bananas, right? But potassium is also found in the greens of beets, beet greens, the top part of the beets. It's also found in carrot, pomegranate, prune, orange, and tomato juices, oranges and orange juice. potatoes, sweet potatoes, prunes, spinach, tomatoes, yogurt, milk. So again, really make sure that you're including these types of foods in your diet if you are prone to potassium deficiency. Zinc is the last one that I'll highlight here. Zinc, we know, is good for growth and development. It's essential for immune function, nervous system function, protein formation, reproduction, taste and smell, wound healing. So zinc is very important. I'll also say men also have to pay particular attention to their zinc because for certain sexual functions, men will lose a lot of zinc, right? Did you hear me? So sexually active man, for example, will probably need more zinc than usual. You can find it in nuts and seeds. Pumpkin seeds in particular are really good. Almond nuts are really good for zinc, and other nuts as well. But beef, beans, dairy products, poultry, seafood, like clams, crabs, lobsters, oysters, and then whole grains. These are foods that will have zinc naturally. And so this is the chart that I'm talking about. These are food and herbal sources of vitamins and minerals, primarily herbal sources. Some will list some foods, but we've already seen that in the chart above. But this will be important because, again, if you don't eat a lot of the foods that were mentioned in those categories, you may need to supplement with some herbs. And so know that this is how you get food-based vitamins and minerals, using herbs and foods and not synthetic vitamins and minerals, okay? So let's just say we were jumping to the last one we talked about, zinc, right? So in this little area here, right? So we already have talked about the food choices. We talked about the shellfish and the pumpkin seeds, and I mentioned those, right? But there are certain herbs that are high in zinc: echinacea, garlic, dandelion, cayenne, alfalfa, burdock, rose, red clover, horsetail. These are all herbs that you can take either in tea form, in tincture or extract form, in capsule form, but these will have natural sources for your zinc. And so the same with others. I mentioned iron. So for example, a vegetarian or a vegan who would not do animal products, which is where you can most easily or fast or quickly find iron from like meats and organ meats and things like that a vegan or vegetarian might not eat. This is when you would utilize certain herbs like nettle or Irish moss or kelp or horehound or dandelion or garlic or skullcap. So if there is a iron deficiency, these are herbs that you would make sure that you highlight and add to your daily routine. We will, and I think it's next week, we will talk about herbs in more detail, but because I was talking about nutrients and the micronutrients of vitamins and minerals, I wanted to include this handout in this section so that we could make it clear that there are other sources for your nutrients and not just through foods. So whether there's a limitation of what foods are in your area or the limitation of some of these herbs that may not be in your area, at least you're covered as to how to get these nutrients from your diet and not from synthetic vitamins and minerals that you might buy from a pharmacy, okay? So let me stop my share for a second. And I see that there are a lot of messages here. And I just kind of like to try to go through them quickly myself. Okay, so some of these were for Mr. Mapendera. My energy is too much. I have been told that I'm too much by more people than you could probably imagine. But I guess there was a compliment there because he said thank you. But he first said my energy is too much. That's just me. So let's see, but thank you. If that was a comment, I mean a compliment. Okay, great. Thank you all for your positive messages. Okay, great. So I'm not sure if there's an actual question. I'm scrolling through. Okay, well, yeah, so, okay, this is a lengthy question. And you may, oh, it's 3 questions. Okay. You may have to send that to me privately, but he's speaking about, or the, wait a minute. So I don't know if that's a brother or sister, forgive me. Yeah, so trust is a big thing in healthcare, so part of this question is addressing, whether we trust Western medicine and what have you. There's a reason that I'm a holistic practitioner. There's a reason that I'm not what we would call a Western doctor or an allopathic doctor. I believe that God has given us what we need to survive and heal ourselves. So I only do holistic health, and so when someone wants me to speak on health, I have to always preface it with, I'm only into natural holistic healing. And so, but that's a statement in and of itself. So I think you kind of know what I might think about Western medicine and what Western health organizations overall, especially when it comes to the continent. So in my opinion, I think there should be some distrust or mistrust in terms of the quality and quality of the substances, of the care, or what have you. Not that I'm saying it's all bad and it's life-saving in some situations, but we sometimes just have to think for ourselves and research things before we take any and everything that's thrown at us. But we know for sure that these natural herbs and remedies, they've been used far before this Western system was established and pushed throughout different cultures and different parts of the world. And that's just what I go on. Yeah, well, people have adapted to the Western life too much so in every aspect, whether you're talking about religion, whether you're talking about health, whether you're talking about clothes. I mean, and that's probably another aspect that maybe I am not here to address. I'm here to address the health issues, but in my opinion, as a well-traveled person, the biggest thing I'm asked for when I travel to Ghana is jeans and t-shirts. And in my opinion, I'm like, really? And I ain't trying to offend none of y'all, because y'all probably sitting there in your jeans and your t-shirts, right? But I'm saying, I love African clothes, and I have made it a point for many, many, many years that is exclusively what I wore. So it was always a shock when I would come back and you'd be like, oh, you want me to bring the jeans and t-shirts, but y'all got all these beautiful fabrics and styles of clothing, and that's what you want me to bring? But okay. So not just in health, but yes, go back to our clothes, go back to our natural healers, our traditional healers, go back to our culture, our religions. That's just my 2 cents on that. So yeah, I think we've adapted to too much of the Western lifestyle. Yeah, so as chemical free as you can be, and these fish farms, forget about it. If you haven't gone to the local fisherman to get your fish, and you're having, all of your, not that I'm not a supporter of tilapia anyway, but now you have all these Asians that have come into Ghana, and I'm sure other parts of the continent, that's creating these fish farms and putting their chemicals and such in the waters with this made up fish anyway. But it's not good. It's not good. So all the things that has been given, it's a made up food. And I say that loosely. So yeah, if So no, you don't get the same protein from the fish caught in a local village as you would from a fish farm or farm raised fish from and so yes, I know you understand that because the way you worded the question, you know, you already said, is it the same as the ones that are from these processed farms that contain these chemicals? Of course not. And the question says white people, but again, you know who's in these fish farms in Africa is these Asian people. I mean, I'm sure some white people too, but these Asians have taken over with some of these industries like these fish farms. But no, you go to your local fishermen. Our herbs no longer in Africa. I would disagree that your herbs don't heal the sickness in Africa. I think that you've turned away from the natural herbs and the natural or traditional healers that can heal. So I don't even really agree with the question itself. Sex activity very often. Yeah, so if you're sexually active as a man, with ejaculation, you lose zinc. And so what you would want to do is pay particular attention to that section about the zinc. So that was why I was just kind of trying to quickly highlight that part. But yes, what specifically happens is you lose more zinc through ejaculation. So you want to make sure that your diet consists of zinc-rich foods, okay, in addition to other things. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sister Denise, as always. I appreciate your love and support. And great. Okay, so I think those are all the questions. So very quickly, I lost my, why can't I see what time it is? Okay, 11:30. Okay, so let me go back to sharing the screen. Thank you for your, if you can enable me again, Yvonne, to share the screen. So the next thing I want to talk about, so we've talked about where we get our different nutrients. Can I share yet? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I got you. And so what we know is that there are different types of diets, right? So we know there are different types of diets. One has to choose sort of for themselves what is best. I'm not a big proponent of just saying, oh, everyone should be vegetarian or everyone should, never eat this, that, or the other thing. I do think that we should focus on making choices in more alkaline foods than acid forming foods. And just by definition, that would limit or strictly reduce the amounts of meats that you're taking in. But what we know is alkaline forming foods keeps the body in balance and keeps the body able and fit to fight off different health conditions, diseases, disorders, and such, right? And we know that acid forming foods make the body sick, makes it stiff, makes it unable to fight off disease and illness, right? So if you're not really able to get your mind wrapped around the whole vegetarian concept, focus on alkaline forming foods as opposed to foods that are more acidic so that your body can stay in natural pH balance, right? And so that's one aspect. The other aspect is a lot of people, even people who are vegetarian, who have plant-based diets, consume too many sugars. So one of my main things that I end up focusing on with people and just, for myself is really watching what types of foods you're taking in terms of their sugar and starch content. That may be for some people more important than cutting out meat, okay? And then let's talk a little bit about water, and then I'll just quickly go over these healthy diet choices that's listed here in this handout. What we know is that we need water. We know that the body is 2/3 or 60-something% of water. We know that water cleanses. We know that it purifies. We know that it detoxifies. It washes away poisons and toxins and things that are unhealthy for the body, right? And we know that it can be healing and restorative. So water is essential. You have to drink water. You have to include it in your diet. The best drinking water that's possible is really the best suggestion that I would say at this point. If you're able to get alkaline water or distilled water, that's what I use. And then in terms of how much, a general rule of thumb from a holistic standpoint is half your weight in ounces. So for example, if you are 160 pounds, you should drink in a day, not all at once, but in a day's time, at least 80 ounces of water, okay? If you're in an extremely hot environment though, of course, you would probably need to increase that. You have to stay hydrated because as we sweat and perspire, we know that we're losing a lot of water. So we need to stay hydrated, replenish our bodies, okay? So that may need to be altered if you're in a very hot or really sunny area. So there are some diet options here. Again, I always suggest that people do what they can be most compliant with. So again, not pushing any particular diet. There are diets like the raw food diet, where you don't eat any foods that are heated above, I think 100, 115 degrees. So not everything has to be strictly raw, but pretty much. Very low temperature, very little heat, and that makes sure that the natural enzymes that are in foods, that you're getting all of the fullest nutrients available from that food. This may be included with your juicing, even though a juice fast or a juice diet can be in and of itself, but raw juices are included as well in a raw food diet. Sometimes people may choose to do just a short period of time of juice fasting so that you give the body a rest from having to digest solid foods all day long and all night long. So 3 days, 4 days, 7 days, whatever, you may choose to do a juice fast with just fresh, raw fruits and vegetables. The alkaline diet, I've kind of mentioned just a moment ago. I actually forgot it was listed here, which is why I kind of gave my commentary before this. But yes, this basically is where you take in more alkaline rich foods so that the body, again, stays in balance and in greater shape. There's a macrobiotic diet one might look into. This is based on the Asian yin yang concept. It's mainly grains and vegetables, so it is kind of predominantly a vegetarian thing, but they eat a lot of the different types of cabbage and cruciferous types of vegetables. Then there's the Gerson diet, where this is basically kind of combining the whole organic vegetarian plus raw juices plus different enemas and natural supplements all together. And then I'm sure there are many other diets that one could follow. Usually I used to teach a detox and cleansing class where we talked about different types of fast that might fall underneath here, where we talk something about a mild food diet. So a mild food diet might be where you just eliminate certain more harsh foods that are harder to digest and such. Like it talks about mainly eating fruits and vegetables steamed or sauteed, you know, low cooked or lightly cooked, I should say. Eliminating things like black pepper and salt and certain types of oils, using mainly just herbs and spices for your seasoning, not doing any fried foods, not doing any canned foods, as natural, as clean as possible. So they're all different types of diets, different cleansing diets, detox diets that one can follow, okay? So I wanna leave that. In the last couple of minutes, I wanna quickly talk about, it's important as to what you eat, but it's also important how you eat it, right? So in eating, you know, it's a whole science behind it. So what's important is what you eat, how you eat it, and when you eat it, right? And just very quickly, when we eat, we always want to leave time that we don't have a full stomach upon resting. So you don't want to eat a heavy meal and then go lay down for your night of rest, right? You always should give at least 2 hours before you retire at night, or if you sleep during the day because you work at night, but 2 hours before you lay down to sleep, you want to have your last meal so that it has had time to digest. Because at different hours of the day, the body is doing different things anyway. So you don't want to interfere with that function because you wanted to eat a heavy meal and then lay down. That's also how we keep weight on ourselves and, again, develop different digestive issues. We've talked a little bit about what to eat. So in terms of making sure you have your nutrients, micro and macronutrients. But now let's talk a little bit about when or how to eat it. Food combining is essential because this is what will aid in the proper digestion of our foods, okay? So we know that in most cultures, we think that the concept of meat and potatoes is a proper combination. But so proteins and starches is not a good combination of combining your food. This will interfere with proper digestion. There are different enzymes and different gastric juices or gastric fluids that are required to digest these two very different food categories. It takes different enzymes to break down proteins than it does starches, and they do not mix. A better combination is proteins with vegetables or starches with vegetables, okay? And they go on to even give examples of how to mix fruits. Usually the categories of fruits should be left alone. Acidic fruits should be eaten all together. Subacidic fruits should be eaten together, and then your sweet fruits should be eaten together. And generally mixing those in a fruit salad of acidic, subacidic, and sweet fruits are not a good combination. It's okay if you mix some of these, but ideally, if you're having lemon and orange and grapefruit, eat that together. If you're having raisins and dates and bananas and all of that, eat those together. If you're having cherries and mangoes and grapes and apricots, all of those go together. Mixing them will also interfere with how things are combined, okay? And this is just sort of an overview. Good combinations are proteins and leafy vegetables, starches and vegetables. Poor combinations are proteins and acid fruits, and leafy vegetables and acid fruits, leafy greens, and subacidic fruits. So let me take this moment to say this. People are now into this whole smoothie thing, right? And where they're mixing any and everything together in a smoothie, right? This is the reason. You see this right here. This whole little, can y'all see my little, see my little arrow going around? Thank you, Yvonne. This is why you just don't mix everything together, because and old school naturopaths or old school holistic practitioners know fruits and vegetables don't go together. When we talked and learned about juicing decades ago, we never mixed all of this stuff together. And that's because it does not combine well when you're talking about digesting these foods, okay? So throwing your spinach, you know, in, you know, with your, whatever, your strawberries or your mangoes and all of that, not a good combination. I don't care who sells it in the store. I don't care what place has a smoothie on their menu that you can buy, doesn't matter. Especially if you have digestive issues already. So now, if you don't have any problems and you think it's fine, you like the way it tastes, that's the only way you're getting your fruits and vegetables in, okay. But if you're already having some digestive issues and you know that you can improve on how you eat, really follow these really good tips on how to ease digestion, okay? The last handout, I know I have a couple more minutes, and these are just some basic elements of healthy eating, okay? Eating whole foods as fresh, and clean eating is the concept of trying to do organic, trying to do it whole, unadulterated, unprocessed. That's what we mean when you hear the term clean eating or whole food eating or healthy eating. You want them to be as natural and as natural of a state as possible, okay? This is a big one for a lot of people. Drink no more than 4 ounces of liquids with your meal. Otherwise, you are diluting the natural digestive juices that already exist in your stomach, okay? Very important. Eat after, drink after, and at least 30, 45 minutes, maybe even an hour after you've had your meal, if you want a tall glass of something. But allow the food to at least get into the stomach and allow those digestive juices to begin working, okay? Get enough fiber in your body. Bowel movements are important. We will talk about that. I think that's week 3, but you have to get sufficient fiber. You have to limit alcohol, caffeine, nicotine, over-the-counter drugs, things like that. It's important to find out what's causing your pain so that you're not doing too much ibuprofen or other, synthetic pain relievers. It's not healthy, it's not normal. It will wreak havoc on your liver. So it's important to know, well, what's causing this pain so that I don't have to keep popping, pain medicine for this headache or for this backache or what have you. Exercise, move your body. This helps not only with losing weight, but you want your body to be strong. You want it to be flexible. You want to be able to have endurance and be able to just go through the day without getting winded, without overworking your body, without developing aches and pains, right? So move your body, get proper exercise. Proper elimination, again, we're going to talk more about that, but that's essential. You have to go to the bathroom at least once a day, maybe more, but skipping days or going to have a bowel movement once or twice or 3 times a week is not sufficient. It is not healthy. You are full of it, literally, and you have to do better. I know I skipped a few of these. Chewing your food thoroughly. These are really simple tips, but very, very important, okay? So go through this, read through the information. Week 2, next week, we will talk about herbs and homeopathy and essential oils and these sort of things. So look for your reading assignments each day, I'm sorry. And I look forward to seeing you back next week. If there were questions that I didn't get to, and some of you have done this consistently, if you need to email me, I'm putting my email here. If you need the packet or if you have other questions, feel free to email me. And as always, me being too much again, right? As always, I bid you good health and peace. Have a wonderful next class and wonderful week. And I'll see you back here next week. Okay. So peace, everybody.
Thank you very much. Yes, up next we have Dr. Wright Tarin. Can you hear us? Dr. Wright?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, welcome.
Okay. You should see me. Hello, how are you all? Hello.
Hello. Hi.
Okay, so I want to put the syllabus up while we're together. Hello, everyone. I guess I'll open this for a second. So welcome. You just had a really full class for your first day of class. My name is, last cycle, I did not give a full introduction of myself. So this time I'll do that as we start. And then if you have questions, you can ask at the end. But this is the Pan-African History and Organizing course. And welcome to it. This is, what is this? This is actually our 8th cycle. Well, it's really our 9th, because it started without a number. So this is the 9th cycle that we're doing of this course. And this course in particular is an ideological training course. I'm gonna post the syllabus to the WhatsApp group, but I'm also gonna share it in this session right here. I won't keep you for more than the hour. I'd probably be less this time, but normally expect that when we have our Saturday lecture, it'll be a full hour. And towards the end, I will take questions, comments, thoughts, all of that, and we can dialogue back and forth towards the end of the session. I'm going to read this to you all really briefly, but you're going to have this yourselves during, well, I'm trying to put it up during the course of the session if I don't have an uninterrupted connection. But you all are primarily ambassadors, and I know that there are people who are on, you can't hear me? Someone said they cannot hear me.
I can hear you.
You can hear me? Okay, so then that might be on their end. All right. But most of you are ambassadors and have a very clear, okay, I have a very clear understanding of what you're doing in I Love Black People. But this course here helps you do some of the ideological training work that's necessary in being effective in developing the orientation to execute the work that you are doing with I Love Black People. So that's what we do here. You are informed of the history, the language of Pan-Africanism. You're grounded in the history, the politics, and the culture in order to go out and do the work that you are doing as ambassadors. So this is the course where we consciously engage what we know, what we believe we know, and how we're going to apply that to your roles as ambassadors in I Love Black People. Okay, so let me just read this briefly. An introduction to Pan-African history and organizing. It is an ideological development course that surveys the history of Pan-Africanism as a theory and practice. The seminar is structurally designed to examine and engage in a critical analysis of the theories and practices of Pan-Africanism as both a political and ideological impetus for organizing African and Black people globally. The course begins with the historical foundations of Pan-Africanism at the turn of the 20th century as a budding concept in the African diaspora and the Americas. It becomes the impetus for international organizing in Europe, the first Pan-African Conference in 1900, and finds its highest expression in Africa as liberation struggles against colonialism and the ideal of continental unity. Many have questioned the measurable results produced by Pan-Africanism. This course explores this idea and qualifies the practice and production of Pan-Africanism in light of measurable social, political, economic, and material gains for African and Black people globally by examining policy cases, conference resolutions, and various approaches employed by early proponents of Pan-Africanism, African nationalist organizational bodies and institutions. Okay, so that's the overview pretty much of the course. It's the course description, and you will have that for yourself. And then there are a number of learning outcomes and learning objectives, which I'm going to have on the screen when I discuss them, because they're more extensive than that. But I want to say, to begin with, is I was going to do an introduction, but let me start in. What I'm going to say is that you should come away with not just the language, but an understanding of what Pan-Africanism is in a concrete way. And this is important because of the simple fact that one of the criticisms of Pan-Africanism has typically been that it is not concrete. It is not a concrete, solid concept, and therefore it has produced no measurable results for us, okay, as a people, both here in the diaspora or on the continent and the other subsequent diasporas. And it is reduced very often to a feeling as opposed to a concrete ideology where there is a theory and an actual practice in carrying out Pan-Africanism. So we will correct those things. You will become informed of those things. You have a very basic understanding of what Pan-Africanism is, and you will have very concrete understanding of the results, the productions, right? The measurable results, both specifically by individuals and collectively in organizational and institutional bodies, you will have a good understanding of what Pan-Africanism has produced. Okay, so that's primarily where the course is going. That being said, once you have that concrete understanding, and we get to that very quickly, we will move on to studying those individual proponents in the context of a case, 2 cases, and we will also study the organizational bodies and institutions that advanced Pan-Africanism and were put in place to advance Pan-Africanism, right? So the purpose of studying individual proponents and studying organizational bodies as a result is because we don't want to reinvent the wheel, okay? We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Whatever our ancestors did in laying the foundation to engage in this particular struggle for Pan-Africanism, we should claim those measurable results, and we should claim those strategies and those tactics and apply it to contemporary problems and issues that we are still having, that are age old, okay? And then the things that we are still missing, we can come up with new ways of problem solving that are Pan-Africanist in nature. And I'll get more specific because you have a working definition of what this all means in terms of Pan-Africanism. So that is the general structure objective of the course in terms of a description. And I'm going to share this momentarily. Now, the other thing is, we have 4 weeks. So I had to learn a lesson last time around. This lecture is inclusive of the 4 weeks. So we really only have 3 more weeks left after today. So we're gonna move very quickly. I start the course out, and I've started this just recently, the last 2 cycles. I start out with showing a film around the origin of humanity. And I do this in my academic setting at the university I teach at. And why do I show this film? It's called The Journey of Man, A Genetic Odyssey. I show this film primarily because of the simple fact that for us to all come into the conversation with the same knowledge base, this film helps in that process. Meaning, when I say African, for me, African is synonymous with human. Why? Because what this film will show you is that humanity originates in Africa. And I typically have not used this film up until the last 2 cycles. Why? Because I had not felt like we had time for this discussion. But then I realized I needed to use this film because that conversation in all human social interactions, one needs to understand who we are talking about when we talk about human beings initially, for most of the time that we've been on the earth. And that is African people who are identifiably Black. Okay. Melanin is a natural characteristic of the human being. It's like the human jacket. Okay. Almost none of us come into the world without it. All right. However, there are people who do, right? So, and this commentary in and of itself is a commentary that is, I guess you could say, a reaction or a rebuttal to this idea of white supremacy in culture, right? Whiteness being the most human, being at the center of the world, whiteness being the beginning of human culture, right? So human beings by default being white. Well, we know that that is not true. Okay, and yes, we struggle. Part of how I structured the course is that I'm going to struggle against some of the things that colonialism and neo-colonialism around the world have imposed on us as common beliefs. Is going to challenge all of that, right? So I start off with this film called The Journey of Man, A Genetic Odyssey. He is not identifiably African or Black like us. However, he is a scientist who just simply put DNA mapping, use DNA mapping to qualify an age-old theory, which is that humanity began in Africa. And that African people are by default almost, that to be human means to be African first and foremost for most of the 200 to 300,000 years that we have been on Earth, right? This racial thing that we're struggling against is a recent production in the last, 7 to 8,000, well, Europeans have only existed 7 to 8,000 years, but this construct of race has only existed for the last 400 to 500 years, okay? Since 1492, since the Iberians come out of the Iberian Peninsula and out into the West, this construct and this idea of race, because of their interaction with the Moors, emerges. As they look for conquest, right? Both in human beings and in terms of land. So what I want to achieve with showing this film is that, one, this theory that humanity began in Africa can be proven scientifically through DNA mapping. And I wish he had more melanin. The person's name is Spencer Wells. But we are using his work to observe the reactions, the attitudes of what you actually are and will be dealing with as ambassadors of I Love Black People. In other words, in the film that we're going to watch, and you're going to watch it on your own, I'm just going to give you the link. It is on YouTube, so you'll see it there in the syllabus, and I'll be putting it in the course. The reactions that the world has, whether he's in Asia or whether he's in the Americas testing DNA and doing DNA mapping, the reaction that the origin of humanity, and I would even jump to say civilization, began in Africa, the idea as it is posed to the many different cultures that are in the film is provocative to them because of this racialized society that we live in now, okay? So that is what I want you to look at and critique more than anything in the film. And sure, Spencer Wells is wrong. Europeans didn't come up with science. Absolutely not. So we can criticize him, right? But sometimes we'll be utilizing things for a particular value, but it doesn't mean that I or we endorse everything he says. So that is going to be your first assignment when you get off of here with me today, to watch The Journey of Man and Genetic Odyssey. And yeah, write down your criticism. But I want all of us to be on the same page and acknowledge the undisputed fact that to be human means to be African first, right? So we're all on the same page. And then to understand what Blackness is for us, right? And that can vary for some people, but for most of the time on Earth, Blackness is just a natural characteristic, okay, of human beings. It doesn't become a racial category, a non-scientific racial category at that, until the emergence of Europeans into the West looking for resources, right? And that took place 400 or 500 years ago and counting, right? So that is your first assignment that you will see go up in the course. And I'm going to give you just a little blip maybe here today. And of course, the film starts on the continent of Africa. Some of you are probably in Southern Africa, but that is, yes, to be human is to be African for most of the time on this earth, right? It was synonymous. Let me take it a step further. And I keep quoting one of my old classmates, but he says, no human being has lived or could live really outside of a cultural construct, right? Culture is how we eat, what we're cooking to eat, how we live, how we pray, how we deal with each other, right? Our politics around that. That's culture. No human being lives outside of a cultural construct, right? The first human beings on this earth, the Homo sapiens sapien, the film gets into the scientific term, are in Africa. Therefore, for most of the time that we're on this earth, to be human means to be African. They are synonymous, right? So we definitely, to take that, so you got that. And that's an important thing for us to all come in on the same page as far as that's concerned. And then also to understand that this is not just a theory. This is a theory that has been around for a long time, understanding the peopling of the world, but then understanding the migratory patterns of human beings around the world and qualifying that scientifically. So it is beyond dispute at this point, okay, about where humanity began, who humanity is on many levels. And so that this film gets into that. This is the scientific conversation, okay? And you may not use this information as you go out as ambassadors, but this information is meant to transform you ideologically and fortify you, okay, in the work that you're doing. So that's the main thing I wanted to say. Yes, that's the main thing I want to say. I'm not going to keep you all the full session this time around, and it's already 12:04. Time like flies. What I'm going to do, because I'm having a little problem over here sending it to my WhatsApp. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you all go just slightly a little early, but I'm going to open up to just dialoguing with you for the most part. I might read off some of the objectives so you can get more information, but I want to go right to posting things in your group. And I don't want to skip introductions as I always do, which is what I said in the beginning. So I actually will tell you a little bit about myself. And so I guess for me, it's so organic for me to be doing this and this work, because this is actually what I do. I would consider myself a historian and political scientist. I theorize as a historian. I'm born in the United States, in New York in particular, raised in New York. I went to a school called Tuskegee University on the undergraduate level. And then I returned to New York. Let me say this. I went to a school called Tuskegee University on undergraduate level where I studied history, okay? And I got my bachelor's of science in history from Tuskegee University. And then I returned to New York, and then I got a master's of arts in modern African history, concentration, independence struggles. My specific area of expertise and study was the necessity of armed struggle in settler colonies. So in other words, the necessity of armed struggle in East Africa in particular. And, but that's not what I ended up writing my thesis on. I wrote it on the same period, but something different. And then I got a PhD from Union Graduate School, or Union Institute University, which is in Ohio. And My PhD is in public policy, well, really interdisciplinary public policy and social issues. So I work across discipline in looking at policy issues from a historical perspective, so to speak. Basically, I study the impact of policy on African populations here, there, everywhere, right? Aside from that, let me see. So I'm an author. We are gonna use my book just a little bit, maybe like 2 chapters of the book. And then I also, I've been a producer for a couple of years, radio producer for a couple of years in the recent past, and I'm about to go back. So to 1 African-centered show, 1 more activist show. So I've been in that. And then I teach for the City University of New York. And yeah, that's it. So the book that I said I wrote is called, is a little very to the left in the sense that it's called Booker T. Washington in Africa, The Making of a Pan-Africanist. And that is a challenge to the traditional notions of who the figure Booker T. Washington actually was. In this book in particular, we're going to use 2 of the cases and one of the chapter on Pan-Africanism, which one defines the period, the moment in time that Pan-Africanism emerges. And then the cases, one called the Liberian crisis and the other, the African exclusion measure, which I was alluding to before, but those are 2 of the cases we're going to look at here, which are concrete examples of measurable results Pan-Africanism has produced in the world and in terms of policies that impacts African people. So we will be using those. All materials, just so you know, all materials are going to be provided. They're free of charge. They are in the WhatsApp group and posted there. Typically, I post everything on Monday nights. Sometimes I don't have a good connection wherever I'm at, it might be paused, but I'll let you know. You get all the readings in PDF format in the WhatsApp group. I'll also post the links to any films, so you are not required to buy anything. I got away from the bio, but just so you know, you don't have to buy anything. This is, the materials are of no cost to you. What I would suggest is that you keep the materials because they are in PDF format. Keep them so that you can compile them because they are going to be resourceful to you in the future. And some of these items, these documents, some of them are historical and you would want to keep them because they're not free, right? You're getting them free in this context, but they're not free in general. You would have to, I don't know, buy them somewhere, you know, or buy a book that has them in it. So you'll be getting those documents that are relevant to the development in the history of Pan-Africanism as an ideology, you know, for your keeping, right? For your arsenal, so to speak. So you should come out of this course with a healthy amount of documents that are organized and relevant to the work you're doing in terms of grounding you in the history and the political history of the Pan-African struggle in the world. So I know I got away from my bio, but anyway, so that's what we're doing here. I have been teaching a course similar to this for many years. I developed a course called Race, Culture, and the Pan-African World, or Modern Black and African Political Thought, where I pretty much for a long time have taught this particular history. But also too, I wanted to add that, you know, so I gave you my professional or academic credentials, so to speak. But really, to be quite frank with you, what brought me to this conversation just in general in my life is meaning Pan-Africanism, is the fact that I was in a Pan-Africanist organization, a revolutionary organization called the All African People Revolutionary Party, which was started by Stokely Carmichael. I don't know why former members don't, shout out the AAPRP, but that is the place, the space through which, the organizational body through which I got my political education and developed my developed myself ideologically. So by the time I got a PhD, I was already very immersed in the political history of African people and Africa. So like I said, just in many ways, politically and academically, this is teaching this is pretty organic to me. Does anybody want to ask me anything about that or anything? I'll stop and I'll let you ask some questions. It's 12:12, and then I'm going to queue up the objectives. Okay, so I'm going to try to share that. Okay. So I'll answer some of these questions. So someone wrote, good, someone said, I'm getting you so well. Okay, someone said, can you hear me? Yeah, so Brother Runoko Rashidi just passed away. And it's interesting because I think about 2 years ago this time, I attended an event where he was the keynote speaker, and I was on the program too, but he took up most of the time, and it was awesome. So, it's a loss, but he's done amazing work, and that's going to be here forever. We have his work, right? Which is really, to be quite frank with you, a major part of the person, right? We transfer our life force into our work. So he was very committed to talking about precisely what I stated, that African people are humanity. It's synonymous with humanity, and therefore all the world's indigenous people were African first. When people always try to say, oh, we found some Black people here or there, in the Pacific Islands and some faraway place. Of course, right. That's they are what human beings would look like. You're calling them Black because of the racial construct that has been imposed on the world. However, all the world's indigenous people are African first, identifiably African. It's like what you see today is hundreds and maybe tens of thousands, and even hundreds of thousands of years in terms of change and adaptation by various populations in the world to look as they do. But upon arrival, from leaving the house of what I consider humanity, the African continent, you were identifiably melanated, Black, right? So, yes. And Runoko Rashidi did a great job on that work in terms of covering the global African presence. Okay, that was his well-known exhibit and work, constant work and presentation. So those of you who don't know, he died in Kemet in Egypt, present day Egypt. So he had just arrived, and I don't know a lot of the details, but I just know just this basic part that he arrived there to meet some other people. I believe they're on a trip, always constantly doing the work. And he had a heart attack, to my knowledge. And so made his transition in, the land of our ancestors. So, yeah. Right, so Sister Denise acknowledged that. Hello, Denise Chabaz, how are you? Hello, Roland. Claudie. Okay, I hope Muhammad can hear now. Okay, so someone said, I'm glad the origin of humanity is in Africa. Me too. All right. Amar Sharif. So was Jesus Christ a black man? So I don't know whether Jesus Christ was black man. According to Christians, the book that people reference is the Bible, and the description, right, of Jesus Christ in the Bible is that of a bronze person, which AKA, as far as I'm concerned, means you're African, you're black. And then we also know the geographical location of many of the events mentioned in the Bible. If you look at the Bible as a historical book. That being said, I want to be strategic how I answer this question, because really I'm more on the political side. I don't get into religion or religious ideology. But what I will say is that all the world religions, and our traditional religions, some people say you shouldn't say world religions, and I agree with that. We have our indigenous cultures and traditions, which are a way of life, which are religions. And then you have Christianity, you have Judaism, and you have Islam. All three of those were born in Africa. No offense, but the only reason why someone asked about Jesus Christ is if you're centered in a Judeo-Christian thought, right? Somebody who's born in another part of the world where Christianity hasn't taken hold. And what I mean by Christendom, this thing that Europeans have come out with, right? True Christianity comes from Africa, and it certainly predates these European cultures that have taken it and turned it into the business. Christendom is a business. It's a capitalist business. It's a business of empire. So it only becomes, relevant to say Jesus was Black when we are dealing with a racialized society, right? Otherwise, being Black is a natural characteristic. And of course he would be Black because it's the human jacket. You need it. It's necessary. Everybody has degrees of melanin. So this is the thing. My direct answer to you is just that I don't know if he was or not. But I think most of our spiritual base comes from people that look like us, that are African and identifiably Black. Right? So the construction or the creation of the white Jesus, certainly it is meant to dominate and, colonize people, right, through religion. And I don't think I get into that in this course, but there's a little piece, if you want to read it, in one of the chapters in my book, I can share it and you can read it, about a particular historical figure and his position on Christianity. But I think there's nothing more profound than putting Jesus in the image of Europeans. So if that's also what you're trying to get at, if a people can say God looks like me, they don't have to do much else. God is in their image. You have said and actually almost done all you need to do to a people that are subjugated. You have put yourself in the image of God, right? And so most people don't worship gods that don't look like them, except for in the colonized world, because it's a tool, right? So religion is really not about liberation of the soul as it was for our ancestors, going all the way back to ancient Kemet. Religion in this day and age is about capitalism. It's about empire. It's about money and power, and less about anything principled, right? Thank you, Robert. I'm happy to hear from you. Okay. Hello. That's right. To be human means to be African. Absolutely. Africa is the cradle. Absolutely. So this film, listen, I'm critical of Spencer Wells. So he is the talking head and the person going around in the film who will conduct the DNA. However, he's not God. He's just a man doing little DNA tests to verify an age-old understanding that we as African people have always had, which is that humanity came from the interior of Africa and populated Africa first, and it is the home of humanity. Okay, period. Yes, Ubuntu. Yeah, so this is a thing. I'm probably not going to cover. This is the European spin. So let me see. Did not exist then, and so there was no Jesus, Mary. Right. This is a European spin on the knowledge stolen from the tombs. Absolutely. So we know the Christ story is not unique to Jesus Christ. We know there's a Christ story in ancient Kemet that predates all of this. Just so people, I don't want to get into Christianity conversation because that's not where we're going. What we have as Black people and African people need to understand is that our politics in the world about our liberation, our struggle for our liberation needs to be our religion. That's part. And what do I mean by religion? That means a daily part of our life. Daily part, right? So whether you're an ambassador and I love Black people or who's working to make this world a safer place for Black people, or whether you do anything else, the idea is that we come together to serve our interests. And our number one interest is to be safe in the world. And as you'll see, as I get into our next session, the idea of Pan-Africanism, a bare bones definition would be the unity of African people, Black people, for the purpose of eradicating oppression and exploitation, right? So in other words, our first priority is coming together in order to ensure safety. There's safety in numbers. We come together and move as a block. We're unified in that way to ensure our protection, to insulate ourselves, right? And you all are doing this through technology. So you're leveraging technology to do that. So the truth of the matter is whatever our religious orientation is, because I'm not, I know a lot about religion, world religions, various religions, traditions, but that's generally not what I teach. And I don't get into telling people anything about religion, but yes, you're definitely right. Most or many of the stories or beliefs that are in Bibles and other religious texts originate in Africa, particularly the Christ story, right? The first virgin birth or sacred birth or immaculate conception really comes from the cultural, the belief or the I don't want to say cultural myth, but our belief in Asar and Aset, so creation story, Asar, Aset, and Haru, which is Egypt, right? Ancient Kemet. We can't, this is undisputed because the story of Asar and Aset, which is Haru, which is a Christ-like figure, is written on the temples. So there's no dispute about who predates what or who, right? And so then you have thousands of years later, the birth of story, but it is not the first one, okay, at all. It is not the first. None of what we know in the Bible and all of that is only about 2021 years old, right? Because we're on the Christian calendar. When we talk about ancient Kemet and African civilizations, we're talking about at least 5,000-6,000 years ago plus, and it is written in stone, much of what we need to know about them, right? So unlike the Judeo-Christian or the Christian context, most of that was not written in stone. It was theoretically written on paper after Christ died. So I'll leave it there because I don't want to get into religious ideology. But the point is that yes, everything one knows in the context of Christianity, it is predated by ancient Africa for sure. It's not even disputed, right? Take a trip or watch a video on ancient Egypt and find out how old the creation stories and the civilization itself are or is. And so you're right, Elaine, for sure. Why other continents are so much developed than Africa, yet civilization began from Africa? I don't think it's a problem with, the person asked, could it be a problem with fellow Africans? No, I don't actually think it's a problem with fellow Africans. So your name looks familiar, so I don't know if you've ever been in other classes. I have a succinct answer for you. The reason why is for a number of reasons. A concentration of the world's resources in the Congo and the 9 surrounding countries. This is why Africa is always interrupted, invaded, exploited, plundered. Okay, so the bulk of the resources on Earth, right? Other places have resources, but the bulk of the world's most important resources are in the Congo and the 9 surrounding countries. So you have a focus because human beings are looking for survival. That human beings who don't have those resources are looking for survival. Then you have, listen, 1 point, right, to date, around 1.5, 1.6 billion people on the African continent. So a bulk of the world's population. 3, currently, the other reason is a bulk of the world's population that is primarily right now under 30 years old, right? So you're talking about the people who are going to be spearheading the future, running into the future, okay? Will be a part of the world that many other people won't see in 20 years, okay? And the fastest growing entrepreneur markets on earth, in the sense that entrepreneurship in Africa is growing at a faster rate than it is growing anywhere else in the world. So Africa is the future. Without Africa, all of the Western world, even right down to the technology that we're using, would not be possible. Okay, again, with the arable land on the continent of Africa, Africa can feed actually the world, probably the only continent that could even make that claim. Okay, the issue with Africa and African people is simply that all of those reasons I just listed are why other people covet Africa and have their hands in Africa. Survival tomorrow belongs to Africa because Africa has everything it needs, and African people have there in their midst the things that they need to go into the future. What has happened is that other people have exploited those things, and other people have caused chaos in Africa in order to extract, exploit both human beings and the resources, right? Because human beings are priceless resources. So you're still a human being. You don't achieve one goal, you will make them do many things, right? In the case of enslavement, you can make them build a whole society, like in the United States. Okay, so human beings are priceless. So human resources and material resources, resources. We get to this in the end about Patrice Lumumba and the Congo and the resources that come out of specific African countries, which I always say, when I hear the resources in a particular country, I always say, oh, there's not going to be any peace, because the Western world will never let those countries have peace as long as they have key resources that have to do with modern development, and particularly military armament and weapons, right? The stuff that makes weapons, cobalt, coltan, all that kind of stuff. So, so that is the problem, to answer your question, I guess, kind of in a roundabout way. So what we're going through is no one else has ever gone through, right, in the world, right? So there is no other Africa in the world, right? Asia is not Africa. So we know this by the Chinese coming in. There's a reason why the Chinese are coming to Africa. There's a reason why Europeans have come to Africa and exploit the resources, because they are resource poor, right? And what we have to figure out is, for us as African people, how do we come together in a way that is most advantageous to us, right? And how do we consciously function daily in a way that is ultimately beneficial to us as we are positioned in different places, industries, organizations, or individually, right? How do we do things that are good for African people, that are measurable for African people, that are to the benefit of African people? Because the world we live in right now is that the world benefits more from Africa than African people benefit from Africa and African people, right? Seldom are we allowed to serve each other without interruption. And this is not to be ignorant about ethnic difference, because we're going to get into our issues, right? Meaning the issues between African people, which I think is always the conversation. Some people don't understand that our biggest challenge is forging unity amongst each other. And sometimes that's forged through struggle. It's forged through ideological development, but sometimes it's forged through fire, right? Like a good fight, and it brings us together because we done fought it out and now we're on the same page. And that could be ideas, for a war of ideas, a fight of ideas, a struggle of ideas. But this is part of what we do in ideological development. We struggle with ideas. We engage around ideas to affirm what we do in theory, and then of course in practice. So we are moving consciously instead of unconsciously, right? Because we could know all the ills and problems around us, right? Like we see in Africa, we can see that conflicts may be funded by this one or that one. But how do we take that knowledge and apply it to our actions? So now, how do we move knowing, right, that someone else's culture, colonial culture, imperialist culture, is playing out through us? How do we deal with that? We deal with it consciously, right? We know the history. We understand the politics and the political landscape. We develop ourselves so that we, with every action that we engage in, we know why we're doing it and we know whom we are doing it for, right? And there should never be a moment where you're doing something that you don't know why, that you're engaged in something that you don't understand or don't know why you're doing what you're doing. Right? We want to raise our consciousness. So this is part of what we do in this course. Oh, thank you, Felipe Jr. Is this 1,000 years before oppressors? Absolutely. Exactly. 200,000 to 300,000 is the guesstimation in terms of how long African people have been on Earth. Hello, Ahmad. Okay. Great. I'm glad you're attending for the first time. Okay, so let me just thank you. Yes, Ronoka Rashidi, yes, he was, yeah, he had a massive collection, awesome work. Very well done. As we say in the words of the committee, he is Makaru, his voice is true. So he, his work was truthful and he made a major contribution to us. Yes, Africa is the mother of humanity and the world, right? Okay. True. Everybody likes to film Black. Yes, it's yes. Well, listen, unless something unusual happens, which, you know, the Western world is always up to something, including, you know, is always up to something. Let me say that. But the way things are right now, so let me just give you an example. And I say this often, the average white American is 60 years old or older. Okay. 20 years, more than half of the population will be transition very likely, right? Africa, 1.5, 1.6 billion people, majority of the people under 30 years old. 20 years means power, right? In 20 years, you at your prime, right? Okay, you peaking, right? People say you get your mission at 40. But the point is that 20 years just brings Africa into maturity, right? 20 years in America with a population as majority 60 years old and older changes the demographic, okay, period. So there you go. And Europe has similar zero birth rate numbers as the United States, meaning the European or the your Anglo-American population in America, and European, and the European population in Europe, right? They are consistently at zero birth rate, specifically in America, meaning they have more deaths than births. Okay, so this is a well-known thing, and that's been on the record for at least 10 years. Hello from South Sudan. That's right, the youngest African nation on the continent. Absolutely. And we're going to talk about the role of culture in the liberatory process, right? Versus African people in terms of liberating ourselves from colonialism and imperialism and ultimately the scourge of capitalism, which is meant to decimate us. It is genocidal towards us. It's not just simply free trade and market and all of that and competing company. Capitalism, we were the commodity. Right? We have been the human commodities, which is why I was clear in the beginning to say that material resources and agriculture are exploited and taken out of the continent, but also human resources have been exploited and taken out of the continent then and now, because that's what the brain drain is, right? So hello from South Sudan. Hello to you in South Sudan. Yes. The world is changing, but we just needed to, you know, we need a world, we need an Africa that works for African people. Okay, I do appreciate everybody who is having African content and Black people lead their development and contribution. I'm from Sudan, okay. Well, if you're an ambassador, who is this, Ahmed? I hope you're an ambassador. Make sure you write the administrator in here to make sure that you're officially in the course and that you're an ambassador and I Love Black People. And I think the mission of I Love Black People is very, very clear, which is to, let me just check the time, which is to, okay, so I'm gonna stop there. I won't, well, I'll take the 2 minutes to go over the other stuff, but the mission is to leverage technology. And so in the effort to eradicate xenophobia and racism, or racism and xenophobia, because really more like racism and xenophobia, which applies to when we have our own personal conflicts, right? You know, ethnic conflicts and other type of conflicts within our groups. And we're going to talk about that. So please just check into joining and becoming an ambassador. University of the, okay. I'm not able to read all of this without giving up the time to just go over some of the points, and then I'll post everything in the group. I wanted to do that in the process, but I'm having some technical difficulties over here. Okay, so we have a biomedical student at the University Library. Wonderful. Congratulations. Sure, you're gonna get all the history you need and about Pan-Africanism in this course and then some. Okay, so wow, University of Zelengai, I don't want to pronounce it wrong, in South Sudan. Okay, studying health science, wonderful. So I am because we are, you're in the right organization, because this whole year for I Love Black People is about healthcare and accessing healthcare for ourselves, right? That's safe, and of course it's appropriate, because look at what the whole world is going through right now. Okay, so if you missed some of it, and this is just the introduction today, we get into the content Monday on, so you'll have all of that by then, but you're gonna have it today because I'm actually going to be posting. I need my connection to allow me to post something, and it's not working right now, so I got to check some stuff. Yes, so the European Caucasian race has only been here from 7,000 to 8,000 years. Yvonne, can you give me a copy of these comments? Is there a way you can email them to me? Just so that I can address them in the next one, because there are a lot of interesting. Thank you, Joseph. There are a lot of interesting comments. So if you can cut them and paste them or something like that, the chat?
Yes, I'll do that.
No, somebody, Claudie, no, the PDF documents aren't up. You will see them in the WhatsApp group. So everybody who's on here for the first time, first day, you wouldn't have seen the WhatsApp documents just yet, because I didn't put them up. I was intending to put them in while we were on here, but I'm having one of my screens is frozen. That being said, generally they come out on Monday night anyway, but I will be putting them up as soon as I get off, and at the very least, you'll see the film, because the film is the first thing you're going to do. Watch The Journey of Man, A Genetic Odyssey. But you will have all the readings in the WhatsApp group. If you're not a member of the group, please talk to the administrators in here in the chat and join. I hope you all, I have a kitten and he's running around. I hope you don't see that. But anyway, okay. So I'm going to stop close to time here, and let me just, well, we'll do the other discussion and next time. I want you all to get to watching the film, and that would be the best way to spend your time since we have ran out of time. Okay. It is my pleasure. I'm actually proud today that I got through a little bit of a bio, because there are times where I teach this whole course and I don't say one word about who's teaching you. I guess for me, it's very relevant, but right when I'm in motion, it's not primary, right? The transferring of the information is what is most important to me. So we got through that. You will see, if you're not in the course, please talk to the administrator and say, yes, put me in the course. Let's see what else. Film is the first thing you'll see after this that will go up in the course, right? It'll go up in the WhatsApp group for the course. And also going forward from Monday on, all the documents you get for this, try to put them together, right? Because there'll be times where we have conversations where I reference, something we've already read, okay? So I would try to stockpile them. They're all in PDF form. Some of them are pretty, some of them not so pretty, but they are legible, okay? Thank you all. I am because we are, and I'll see you all next week. You will be doing the reading during the course of the week, right? And it's usually healthy amount of reading, but not too much for you to digest, okay? But the course of this week, you will have about a chapter or two to read. And first on the list, before you do anything, you're going to watch The Journey of Man, A Genetic Odyssey. Okay? Thank you all. And I will see you all on next Saturday, but I'll be talking to you in the group. And this is a smaller group, so that's good. Maybe I'll be able to engage people a little bit more. Okay. All right. Bye-bye. Peace.
Yes, thanks a lot, Dr. Wright.
All right. I am because we are.
Okay, I am because we are.
Bye-bye.